The movie begins in a quiet home where Amelia, a mother of twin infants, is seen preparing a bottle of milk for one of her babies. Meanwhile, the other baby remains calm in another room. Amelia checks on the child briefly before stepping away, unaware that two strangers elsewhere in the house are secretly observing her. Once they deem the moment safe, a woman enters the nursery, carefully lifts one of Amelia's babies, and carries the infant outside to a waiting car where her accomplice is stationed. Still oblivious to the abduction, Amelia places the baby in her arms onto the bed and closes the window curtain. Suddenly, the male perpetrator sneaks in and takes the remaining baby. Sensing something is wrong, Amelia reacts instantly, chasing after him. As she reaches the stairs, her eyes suddenly turn white, and she gains a surge of power that allows her to overpower the kidnapper. She manages to retrieve the baby from his grasp, but the other child is already in the car with the woman. Moments later, the stolen baby is left at the doorstep of an orphanage. This event occurred years ago. Now, the scene shifts to one of Amelia's grown children, Edward, receiving a phone call from the orphanage where he was once cared for. Edward had inquired about any possible records related to his origins, but the staff regretfully inform him that no new information has surfaced. His girlfriend, Riley, a nurse, enters the room with a birthday cake. Since Edward's actual birth date remains unknown, she presents him with a special gift, a DNA test kit, hoping it will help him uncover his true identity. After taking the test and receiving the results, Edward discovers a near-perfect DNA match with a man named Manuel Castro. As he processes the shocking revelation, Edward suddenly notices a dark and ominous figure lurking in the corner of the room. Startled, he quickly informs Riley about the DNA results. Shortly after, he receives a message through the DNA app from Manuel, who expresses a desire to talk. During their conversation, they find striking similarities in their pasts. Manuel reveals that he once had a twin sibling who was abducted when they were infants. Their mother never stopped searching for the missing child, and Manuel strongly believes Edward is that long-lost twin. Eager to uncover the truth, they arrange to meet. Accompanied by Riley, Edward flies to a city in Portugal, where Manuel resides. Upon arrival, they rent a car to continue their journey. Along the way, they stop to ask some locals for directions, showing a photograph of the house they intend to visit. Immediately, the woman they speak to looks tense, recognizing the house as Amelia's. Without warning, an older man nearby aggressively orders them to leave at once. Baffled by the hostile reaction, Riley and Edward return to their car and drive away, noticing the couple's grim and uneasy expressions. After an exhausting journey, they finally arrive at Amelia's grand estate. Moments later, Manuel, who bears a striking resemblance to Edward, greets them warmly and gives them a tour of the house. He shows Edward old photographs of their mother, as well as a portrait of their great-grandmother, painted by the renowned artist Goya in the 18th century. When Edward inquires about their mother's whereabouts, Manuel explains that she is unwell but will be available to see him the next day. That night, Edward suggests finding a hotel nearby, but Riley insists on staying in the house. While asleep, Edward has a disturbing dream in which Riley stares at him with eerie white eyes. He abruptly wakes up to find Manuel standing by his bedside, inviting him to meet their mother. As the bedroom door creaks open, Edward is taken aback by Amelia's unsettling appearance, which is drastically different from the pictures he has seen. Nevertheless, he embraces her, overwhelmed by emotions and longing. Tears stream down his face as he finally reunites with his mother. Later, Edward expresses his joy to Riley, but confesses feeling uneasy about the whole experience. Meanwhile, in the main living area, Riley spends some time sketching when Amelia suddenly appears. Though they engage in conversation, an underlying tension makes Riley uncomfortable, prompting her to excuse herself to look for Edward. Later that night, Amelia and Manuel speak privately in Portuguese, discussing Manuel's struggles with fertility. As Riley passes by their room, she overhears Amelia's chilling words. "If you could have children, then you would be my chosen son. I can't wait to feel young again." Realizing that Riley has been eavesdropping, Amelia's expression darkens. Feeling deeply unsettled, Riley rushes to Edward's room to share what she overheard, along with her concerns about Amelia's disturbingly close relationship with Manuel. The following morning, while exercising outside, Riley notices Amelia watching her intently with a chilling gaze. Meanwhile, Edward stumbles upon his mother, speaking with an attorney, who explains the details of a newly signed will. According to the document, Amelia's vast estate, worth $65 million, will be equally inherited by Edward and Manuel upon her passing. Edward is asked to sign the will, but since it is written in Portuguese, a language he does not understand, he hesitates. Elsewhere, Riley attempts to call a friend back in New York, but due to poor reception, the call abruptly disconnects. While exploring the house, she discovers a mysterious box. Curious, she opens it and finds several old photographs, including one of a woman holding a baby and another depicting a family with their child. Suddenly, Manuel appears behind her, prompting Riley to quickly close the box. That night, Manuel is seen standing at the edge of the forest, holding a knife and humming a Portuguese lullaby. Meanwhile, in her bedroom, Riley awakens to the sound of a door creaking open. She hears a baby crying and cautiously steps out into the hallway, following the unsettling sound. She catches a glimpse of a shadowy figure moving ahead of her and continues to trail it until it enters a room from which the cries seem to originate. Carefully, Riley pushes the door open and spots a rocking cradle. But just as she approaches, she jolts awake, realizing she was dreaming. Yet, her terror does not end there. She notices a woman standing in the corner of the room, watching her with an eerie demeanor. The figure suddenly lunges toward her, causing Riley to jolt awake once more, this time fully conscious. She glances around and realizes that her clothes have been neatly arranged in her suitcase. Disturbed by the experience, Riley confides in her friend Jay, who advises her to leave immediately. She agrees, but knows she must convince Edward first. Meanwhile, Edward searches for Riley, but is distracted by an ominous noise coming from a nearby room. As he cautiously enters, he is horrified to find a mysterious man. Panic takes over, and the sight of a baby's shadow in the water renders him unconscious. Manuel later brings Edward back to the house, secretly adding a few drops of an unknown substance into his drink, claiming it is a sedative. He then instructs Edward to close his eyes, guiding him through a vision of past events. Edward sees glimpses of memories that suggest his rightful place in the family. When he opens his eyes, Manuel encourages him to try again. This time, Edward sees a ghastly woman with blood-stained white eyes. Jolting awake, he finds Riley before him, but something is off. Manuel insists that their family possesses extraordinary abilities. Meanwhile, Riley, growing increasingly suspicious, begins researching the estate's history. Riley discovers that the house they are staying in is infamous for being the residence of a Portuguese witch, known for maintaining her youth by consuming her own children. Disturbed by this revelation, she confides in Edward about her growing unease and suggests they leave for a vacation. However, Edward dismisses the idea, leading to an argument. Frustrated, Riley decides to leave on foot. Eventually, she arrives at the home of Vera, the woman they encountered earlier. Vera shares a photo of her daughter with a man named Arthur, who bears a striking resemblance to Manuel Castro. Riley learns that Arthur and his partner were the ones who originally took the babies. In reality, Arthur is Edward and Castro's biological father. Vera's daughter once told her that Arthur's mother was a witch, engaging in disturbing relationships with her sons and later giving birth to twin boys. One of the twins was used in a dark ritual to grant her eternal beauty. On the night of the abduction, Arthur and his partner attempted to save both babies, but he was ultimately captured and remained in the house ever since. Determined to save Edward, Riley rushes back to retrieve him, but he is still caught up in the family's manipulative grasp, dancing with them. Her abrupt arrival disrupts the atmosphere, angering Amelia. Once again, Riley voices her discomfort and insists Edward leave with her. Though Amelia disapproves, Edward ultimately follows Riley. However, they quickly realize that their car is blocked by Castro's vehicle, forcing them to continue on foot toward Vera's house. Meanwhile, Castro leaves Amelia's house, armed with a knife. Upon reaching Vera's home, Riley and Edward knock repeatedly, but no one answers. Riley decides to enter through a window and finds old photographs of Arthur, which she shows to Edward. They return to pack their belongings, but Edward still hesitates to leave his newfound family. Frustrated, Riley heads to the car alone to wait. Inside the car, Riley receives a shocking new message regarding Edward's DNA test results. The findings reveal a disturbing truth. Edward's genetic sample indicates a relationship within the same bloodline. As she waits, she decides to open the gate, but is horrified to find a large sack on the doorstep containing Vera's lifeless body. Before she can react, she spots Castro approaching in the distance. Panicked, she quickly hides in the garage. When Castro arrives, Riley strikes him with a shovel in self-defense. He nearly overpowers her, but she manages to grab a hammer and injure his leg, giving her time to escape. Meanwhile, Edward is alone in his room when Riley appears, acting seductively. However, it is not the real Riley. It is Amelia in disguise. The real Riley, still on the run from Castro, pries open a locked basement door, uncovering a hidden passage filled with prison-like cells. There, she discovers an older man, Arthur, Edward, and Castro's father, still alive and pleading for help. As Riley ascends through a hidden doorway, she stumbles upon Amelia's true form. She witnesses a disturbing ritual in which Amelia engages in an intimate act meant to conceive a new child for her ritualistic youth preservation. After Amelia leaves, Riley rushes back to Edward, determined to escape with him. They desperately try to evade Castro, and at one point, Riley manages to push him off an upper floor, causing Amelia to scream in rage. Riley attempts to help Edward down the stairs, but they both fall to the ground, leaving Edward injured and helpless. Amelia seizes the opportunity to attack Riley, but before she can succeed, the older man from the basement arrives. He grapples with Amelia, giving Riley the chance to carry Edward to safety. Though Amelia stabs the old man multiple times, he endures the pain long enough for them to flee. Reaching their car, Riley frantically attempts to start the engine. After multiple failed attempts, the car finally roars to life, and they speed away from the accursed house. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Castro slowly regains consciousness. He is not truly dead. Amelia welcomes his return with great relief. In the final scene, Amelia appears youthful once more, cradling a newborn baby in her arms. Castro joins her, and together, they dance. The implication is clear. Amelia has given birth to twins yet again, sacrificing one in her dark ritual while raising the other, ensuring the continuation of her twisted cycle of eternal youth. And with that, the film comes to an eerie and chilling end.